I'm not. A number of people have said that they won't be able to make it, but whoops. I mean, this is to me. This is freaky. Um, and you were part of the freakiness.
Oh,
Okay, you can see the picture of us.
yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was taken at the lakefront. I never go down to the lakefront. I haven't been down there. I don't remember the last time. I think the last time I went down to the lakefront, my kids were really, really small. So it's been well over 10 years. And then I went to the island. But there we are. We went to that hot dog place. I had the veggie dog. You guys had what you had.
Right.
Can you see this picture? Or is it still the same picture?
Still the same one.
Okay, let me. A friend of mine had a going away party for another friend 2 days later. And right in the center, I took this picture out of their window on the 31st story. Right where my cursor is right now in the center of the picture is the hot dog stand.
Mm-hmm.
And right where my cursor is now is where we sat and ate. And
Right.
I never go down. I looked out the window and I went, I've got to take a picture. I have to take a picture. I mean, you can see the sort of the red stain on the wood of the building, just where my cursor's circling around, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and you can see the red stain of the wood just behind us.
Oh, yeah.
I have to admit, I looked down and I went, "This is synchronicity." And what does it mean? So
That's hilarious. No, no, over a decade and then twice in a week.
yeah, and not just
Wow.
twice in a week, but within a stone's throw. We could have looked up to the window and looked down from the window and seen that. That considering how big Toronto is, considering how big the waterfront is, considering all the different possibilities where we could have actually have walked to. I mean, we only had 90 minutes, so it wasn't a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. We just kind of wandered. Like there wasn't any specific plan to it.
No, there wasn't. It was just, where shall we go? Let's walk down this way. And we walked down to the waterfront. And that was sort of the closest place. And then that was the first hot dog stand we came across.
Yep.
And,
Too funny.
yeah.
Too funny. Hey, Guido.
Guido, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you.
How are you all?
I'm good, good. You're looking a little tired.
Hello, Miss. Yes, I know what happened. I sleep well. Maybe too much work. I've been thinking about myself all the time,
Okay.
Very, the most trying I've been doing that. I'm very serious about it. Trying to be aware of myself. So I don't know. I'm sure that that's not making me tired, but I don't know
Well, when you do the inner work and when you try to
much
become
work.
aware of yourself, you are using up far more energy at a higher level
Uh-huh.
than you normally are.
Oh.
So it requires a conservation of energy. If you are losing energy through negative emotions, through identification, internal considering, daydreaming, imagination, lying, formatory thinking, whatever, and you're doing the inner work, the inner work is at a higher level, and so it drains our energy more. So, Aman, I'm just verifying you can hear everything. Well, this is for Aman. Aman is on my laptop. Can you speak again?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello, I'm human. Hello,
Yeah.
how are you? You can hear us too?
Pardon?
You can hear us too?
Here, I'm gonna
Okay.
Yes, I can hear it. Yeah.
I'm gonna put you
Yeah.
away from where you can see me, just because I think it'll improve the sound.
Okay.
Yeah, turns out Zoom, when we started, it wasn't blocked, but Zoom is now blocked in Syria. So I've got her on my tablet with Skype. So I've got the tablet right close to my computer, so hopefully she'll be able to hear the conversation.
Great.
So Guido, inner work, what are you doing?
Um, I'm trying to. I've been doing the prayers. I need you please to send the textual the text of the prayer, the 3 prayers. You know, send it in the email. So the fingers, you know, the right thumb, the index, the middle finger,
Yeah.
all that. I've been doing that, but not the way you teach us.
Yeah, I mean,
You-
that's actually that exercise for wholly affirming, wholly denying, wholly reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being is on endlesssearch.co.uk. That's the website I got it from. I think I've shared, I can share it right now with the group, the downloaded document that comes from that. And I'm sure I've shared it. It's inner exercises, and I've retitled it Gurdjieff Beadler. I'm just sending it again. It's called the 60 bone exercise. Beidler, I keep on saying Beadler, but I've got a member in my group now on Tuesday nights who knew him for 15 years, and she, I say Beidler, and then I look at her, and she doesn't correct me, and then I know, and she says Beadler. His name is Beadler. So, Beadler recommended that we do this one in the morning. So we start with our right hand, our right thumb, and wholly affirming, our right index finger, wholly denying, our right middle finger, wholly reconciling, our right fourth finger, transubstantiate in me, and then our right baby finger for my being. And then we move down to our left foot, and we start with our left baby toe, wholly affirming our left fourth toe, wholly denying our left middle toe, wholly reconciling our left second toe, transubstantiate in me for my being. And then we move over to our right foot, wholly affirming, wholly denying, wholly reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. And then we move up to our left hand and we start with the baby finger, wholly affirming, wholly denying, wholly reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. Now, this being said, I've been working on a major, what I call a compilation exercise, where I start and I spend approximately 12 minutes going through the body, relaxing the body, and then I do the breathing exercise. So breathing in the higher particles and keeping them retained. I was editing that this morning. I've been working on it all week. I've made numerous recordings and said, no, I don't like that. And so I start with a relaxation exercise, and I move to the breathing exercise. Then I move to the 60 bone exercise. I only do that once. Then I move to the joint, the 12 joint exercise. So, the right wrist sources, the right elbow, of, the right shoulder, divine, the left hip, rejoicings, the left knee, revolts, the left ankle, and the right ankle, sufferings, the left knee, direct, the left hip, your, the left shoulder, actions upon us. I go through that one 3 times at a quicker level. And then I also have the 10 bone illumination exercise on it. And then I end with the collected state. So to imagine an atmosphere around us. So I put all these exercises together. It's going to be approximately a half an hour long. And all of the various exercises, like the 60 bone, because there's 3 bones in each finger. So to go through all of our fingers and feet, our toes, is 60 bones. So that's the 60 bone exercise. The joints is the 12 joint exercise that we can do in walking. And then the other one is called the 10 bone illumination exercise. And then I'm going to work on another sort of compilation of exercises for breathing. I came across something very interesting. Hello, Reggie. How are you doing?
Hi. Hello. I'm good.
Okay. I just want to say I have a man. She's on Skype. She's on my tablet right here. So she's listening, and hopefully you guys can hear her. And
Hi.
I can hear.
Hi.
oops.
Hi.
Yeah, I think when you talk, man, you may just have to talk a bit loud if you can.
Okay, I'll try. Yeah.
Adam, please, you talked about 6 exercises. You know, the bone, the 60
Yeah.
bone.
Yeah.
Would you please send the
Well, you
email?
know, when I have the full text for it that I'm satisfied with, I'm going to record it. And then I'm going to put it on YouTube, so you will be able to listen to the recording and follow along. But part of my goal of this is so that when you wake up in the morning and you're lying in bed, without having to listen to the exercise, you can go. Beadler said that we should do the 60 bone exercise 3 times first thing in the morning. So I've been trying to do that as I've been waking up in the morning, going through, you know, my right hand, my left foot, my right foot, my left hand 3 times. The 12 joint exercise, we can actually do it one of 2 ways. So we can do it with sources of divine, or we can do it wholly affirming, wholly denying, because in both of those exercises there are 12 words. That's one more for moving, but we can do it sitting. The 10 bone illumination exercise, we can do it walking, but that one is more for sitting, but we can do it walking. If you're on the subway, if you're on a bus, if you're sitting in the passenger seat in a car or whatever, you can do that one. But this is just, you know, the first bit of what I'm going to do. I'm going to do more. Let me just bring something up. This is what I was reading, my bedtime reading last night. Whoops, that's not let me find a darker version. It's a section that's, I don't know how many words, you know, it's 5 pages taken out, I think, roughly 5 pages, taken from The Reality of Being. Let me bring it up on our screen. By John de Salzman, Madame de Salzman. So, you know, I can go right to the, you know, brief. And I've reformatted this so that I could read it on my phone, which I like to do at night on Adobe Reader. I have a black background and the words become in white. But she goes through breathing. Very interesting to read. Let me just post, I'll post the one that I took from the actual book rather than the version that I reformatted last night because I wanted to be able to manipulate the text, but I'm just sending it to the group. What I found really interesting reading through this, you know, she talks about tension. She talks about how breathing is something that automatically happens in us. You know, we've breathed our whole life. I was actually just talking about this with a client yesterday. My youngest daughter, Freya, who just finished teachers college, when she was a small baby, she turned blue in my arms. She just suddenly had this attack. She couldn't breathe. I picked her up. Her lips literally turned blue. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and I thought she was dying in my arms. And then she started breathing. And this happened a second time. And it happened a third time. And we took her to the doctor. And the doctor said, some babies are breath holders. Either a sharp shock or an emotional, big, really emotional pain, and they stop breathing. And the doctor said it's not a problem because as soon as they pass out, the body's natural breathing reflex will take over. Now, I must admit, a few years later, we had some friends over, and the husband, who was a good friend of mine, said, was she the only child that you wanted? And we went, what? Huh? And it's because we never took our eyes off Freya. And, we said, well, if she has a breath holding episode at the top of the stairs or where she could fall and hurt herself, it could be lethal. So we kept an eye on her to make sure wherever she was, we were watching her. It once happened when she was about 4 years old in the park. And this was in England when I was living there, just behind the school. And she got smacked by an empty swing. And she couldn't breathe. I held her in my arms, she turned blue, and the other parents, in England it's 999 rather than 911, and they grabbed their phones and they were ready to call and saying, don't call. And it was like, are you a child abuser? What do you mean don't call? Don't call. She's gonna start breathing again. And she did, and she grew out of it. We always breathe. We breathe when we sleep. We breathe when we're awake. Normally our breathing is so automatic that we're not aware of it. In the Old Testament, there are 3 separate words, and these words can be and have been translated in a number of different ways. They've been translated as to breathe or breath. They've also been translated as soul. One of them is nephesh. And this is the soul that enters all life. And Mr. Gurdjieff defined life as anything that breathes. And he said, love everything that breathes. So there's a breath that's involved in all life. And I think it was in this John de Salzman, when I was reading it last night, Madame de Salzman, she said the breath of organic life is the 24-hour cycle. So the day is the breathing in and the night is the breathing out of organic life. Everything breathes. In the Bible, the next term is ruach, and this is the soul that enters with the bones. So any chordate being that has a central nervous system and a brain like we do, such as dogs, birds, snakes. When you think about it, chordate beings are actually a very high form of life on this planet. So there's a breath, there's a soul that enters when we start to develop bones, when we have bones. Along with the bones comes a degree of self-awareness. Now, you may not think a fish is self-aware, but a fish can have moments of self-awareness, particularly when its life is threatened. The same with dogs. Dogs actually have more moments of self-awareness than, say, a lot of other chordate beings, because suddenly you can see in a dog that they have this awareness of themselves. So the first level is the mechanical level of waking sleep. That's the level of nephesh. That's the level of mechanical breathing. And we can step up to the next level where we become mindful of our breath, mindful of our breathing. And then there's the higher level, which in the Old Testament is neshama, which is like breathing in from higher realm, breathing in from above. Now, she doesn't go into this in this text. This is just an understanding of that I have. The importance of breath. There's mechanical breath, respiration. Then there's conscious or mindful breathing. You know, that's the awareness of our breathing. And then there is the higher breath. And in Latin, inspire, to breathe. So respiration, the spiration, the word spiration is behind the different labels that we have for breathing. And at the highest level, it's like we breathe in inspiration. So to spire is to breathe. And so we can be mechanically aware of our breath. We can be consciously aware of our breath. And we can open through our breath and breathe in the higher energies, the higher levels. And this is akin, from my understanding, to breathing in the higher particles, the breathing exercise that Mr. Gurdjieff talked about. Now, Madame de Salzman, you know, I can go right back to the beginning of this bit that she said, you know, learn to distinguish two currents of vibrations. One comes from thoughts and emotions and holds me on a lower level. The other is a more subtle current which can awaken and animate other zones of thinking and feeling. I cannot come to a new understanding so long as I have not experienced over a long time the difference between these two currents and their influence on me. The second current comes through breathing. It comes through breath. So when we become aware of the effect that breath has on our body, when we become aware of how breath really feeds our body, we can more readily become aware of this through our extremities, through our hands and fingers, our feet and toes. There's almost like an atmospheric quality. It's different than sensation. It's different than our normal emotional content. It's to me, it feels like an atmosphere flowing around the outside of my fingers. And it's got a pulse to it. And it's not like my normal pulse, 75 beats a minute. It's more in line with my breathing. And when we learn to distinguish sensing from feeling, this is what is meant by feeling. It's different than our lower emotions, than our negative emotions, or the normal emotions that we experience in life. So the end of this, let me just get to the point. You know, she's talking about letting go, just, you know, letting go to me, you know, of the surface of our being. And then she ends with, and this is just, you know, page 150 or something in her book. Now that I feel freer. This is after relaxing. So you start relaxing with let's just do this. Let me just stop sharing for a moment. You know, as you sit there, just try to make sure that your body is in a comfortable position. She said it's very important to become aware of the pelvis and to make sure that the knees are lower than the hips if possible. So to keep your feet, you know, roughly shoulder length apart, your knees slightly lower than your hips. Unfortunately, the chair that I'm sitting in right now, my knees are slightly higher than my hips, but this is my hypnosis chair. So if you can have your knees slightly lower than your hips, your pelvis, and then, you know, you want to, Bennett talked about it the other way, but he talked about become aware of your head balancing on your cervical vertebrae balancing on your shoulders balancing on your spine, and your spine balancing on your hips, so that the energy can flow down your body. It can flow down your legs. this is why, you know, for doing some of these exercises, we shouldn't sit cross-legged on the ground or Sufi-like with our heels on our buttocks. We should sit, you know, with our hips slightly above our knees. For me, I don't like leaning back against chairs because I've got an issue with my back. I was born with vertebrae out of alignment, and I like to just sit. So I've got this space back here, sit, feeling. I mean, and these are two of the sensations. We've got parts of the brain that are capable and are devoted to sensing the effect of gravity on our body, and another part of the brain and neurons that are devoted to sensing balance. So to become aware of your head, your neck, your shoulders, your spine, balanced on your pelvis, and to, whoops, I may have lost Iman. And I think we've also lost Reggie. So to become aware, you know, the energy, just to allow it to properly be able to flow down our body. And then become aware of your eyes. And J.G. Bennett says, you know, allow your presence to enter your eyes. So enter your eyes with your presence. And he said, you know, we can use conscious will, conscious energy to consciously relax the eyes. Just to allow our eyes to relax the muscles attached to the top of our eyes, the bottom, the right and left sides of our eyes, just to relax our eyes. And then bring our attention to enter into our forehead with our presence and relax our forehead. And then to relax your nose, your cheeks, your ears and the muscles in the sides of your head, your lips, your mouth, the inside of your mouth, your tongue, relaxing the muscles in your chin, your jaw, relaxing your throat, your neck, your shoulders, then relaxing your chest, your midriff, your lower abdomen, your upper back and shoulder blades, your middle back, your lower back, your buttocks and hips, and then come to your arms and relax your right arm, the upper arm and your right upper arm, your right lower arm, your right hands and fingers, and then to relax your left upper arm, your left lower arm, your left hands and fingers, and then to relax your right leg, upper leg, lower leg, feet and toes, your left upper leg, lower leg, feet and toes. And then to return your presence, your awareness to the top of your head and breathe in to the top of your head. And as you breathe out, send a wave of relaxation down your body, breathing into the top of your head and then relaxing your body as you breathe out down your whole body. And this is something that Mr. Gurdjieff says is very important to do, to learn to consciously relax the body, that it's very important to relax the body in order to do effective inner work. So many things in my life that on one level seem unfortunate, on another level seem fortunate. I was in a serious car accident when I was 10 years old, 1967. You know, there was Expo 67 in Montreal. We were driving along a major highway and a bus passed us too close and we were pulling a trailer and my mother lost control of the car. No seatbelts, flipped over 3 times. I was knocked unconscious. My brain doesn't have the normal seatbelts. That's a man. Let me just. Hopefully she's back again. Iman? Hello? Okay. Oops, I'll try her. Just give me. So.
Your brain.
So you know, I have this brain injury that means that I can't. When I do this, my brain goes. So I've always walked with deliberation. I've never done anything that's really jarring. So the relaxed state is much easier for me than it is for a lot of people. It's something, that I've striven for. I can stay really still. And I didn't realize that it was all connected to the accident that I had when I was 10 years old. But it really has helped me in good stead for this inner work. The ability to just feel relaxed, feel relaxed. I think Kaman and I keep on trying to call each other now. Let me.
Can we fabricate the same thing you feel
Pardon?
since the accident? Can we fabricate that posture that
Yes.
makes it
Okay,
easy?
you're back. You can hear us, Aman?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Aman's
So
back.
sorry
Okay,
for this.
that's okay. You're in Syria. It's amazing you can talk to us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
keep your body relaxed. Keep your spine straight. Be aware of your head sitting on your shoulders, sitting on your spine, sitting on your pelvis. Feel your body relaxed from the top of your head down to the bottom of your body. And this is an important prerequisite for any of the inner work that we do. Whoops. And let me see. So that here, I'm just going to read the last 2 paragraphs of this chapter on breathing in Madame de Salzman's book, Reality of Being. Now that I feel freer, and this is through the relaxation, I turn to my breathing. I breathe gently, without holding back, without fear of losing myself. It is as though it is myself that I am exercising, engaging in a movement that is more than an act of my body. I trust this movement. This is the in-breath and the out-breath, the movement of our lungs, and allow all ideas, all notions to dissolve. I am not afraid to exhale completely. And earlier in this chapter, she says quite often, we don't exhale completely. It's because we're trying to hold on to different things. And this is part of our breathing identification, so to speak. So just, when we get into a relaxed state and we're breathing properly, she says, first we've got to become aware of, if we're breathing from the top of our lungs, because our breathing should really be animated and controlled by our solar plexus. So when we breathe in at the level of our solar plexus. It's our diaphragm that does the breathing. And when we breathe out from our solar plexus, to exhale completely, to allow the body to breathe in and then breathe out. So I am not afraid to exhale completely. And I discover a new meaning, a sense of the sacred in my human self. So as your body is relaxed from the top of your head down to the bottom of your feet, just really become conscious of your breathing, conscious of breathing from your diaphragm, from your solar plexus, consciously breathing in and then making sure that you properly breathe out. Quite often, we don't breathe out properly. So this is why a lot of people who suffer from anxiety are taught to breathe in for the count of 4 and breathe out for a count of 8, just to cleanse the body. Not only do we feed the body as we breathe in, we also cleanse the body as we breathe out. And recent studies have shown that 70%, that's 70% of the body's waste products are exhaled. So if we don't breathe out properly, we are leaving these toxins inside ourselves. It's like going out in the sun and not sweating and keeping that inside ourselves when we should be allowing the sweat to come out and take out the toxins in our body that come out through our sweat. So breathing out is an essential part of breathing. Breathing out from our diaphragm, emptying our lungs, getting rid of all of the toxins within ourselves, so that when we breathe in, there's room for new things to enter. So it's very important to be aware of our breathing, not just our in-breath. As a lot of people talk about being aware of breathing, they never talk about the importance of exhaling, getting rid of all of that. And in other ways, Mr. Gurdjieff has talked about, our brain can be so filled with beliefs that in order to accept a new belief, we have to get rid of an old one. And he talks about this in many different ways, that to bring something new, we've got to get rid of something old. And this applies to our breath, to our breathing. So breathing in consciously, breathing in from our diaphragm, from the solar plexus, so we breathe in full lungs, and breathing out from our diaphragm and solar plexus. But getting to a point where this is natural, where this occurs properly. And the last paragraph, I see again that I trust only myself, and yet it is the active force of air that I should trust. When I feel more balanced, I breathe as though through the centers, so head, body, and feelings. This is another rendition of the breathing exercise that Mr. Gurdjieff gave in 1949. When I feel more balanced, I breathe through the centers. I breathe through my head, my body, my feelings. So when I feel more balanced, I breathe as though through the centers and silently say, I am. When I say I feel the three centers as though something stands up. And when I say am, I also feel them, but as though something sits down. And in the exercise Mr. Gurdjieff gave, we breathe in the word I and we breathe out the word am. So when I say I feel the three centers as though something stands up. And when I say the word am, I also feel them, so the three centers, but as though something sits down. When I breathe in, I say I and represent to myself that the active elements of the air are entering. When I breathe out, I say am and feel them flow into and fill my body. I do not try to make any more of this I and am. Simply say the words to myself. With each breath, I follow this order for filling. Actually, I'm going to just wait for the last bit. There's some very important things here that weren't fully in the 1939 exercise that I've talked about before. Mr. Gurdjieff said, to breathe in with all three centers. He said all three parts. So our head, our body, and our feelings. And in the middle of this paragraph, she says, when I breathe in, I say I and represent to myself that the active elements are entering. We represent using our head brain. This is our imagination. But there is a right use of imagination and there is a wrong use of imagination. The misuse of C12, the highest energy the human organism naturally produces before we begin to work on ourselves, can be misused in many ways. And one of the ways it's misused is through the wrong use of imagination. But I represent to myself. So she actually gives another piece of the puzzle in terms of what Mr. Gurdjieff said in his exercise to breathe in with all three parts. So as we breathe in, we represent to ourselves that the active elements of the air are entering. Somehow we imagine it, we picture it. It's better, rather than thinking with words, it's better to think with form. So to visualize it, to picture it, whatever way we can. So we breathe in, and as we breathe in, we represent to ourself that active elements are entering. That's a head brain thing. But as we breathe in, we also sense, we also have specific parts of our brain that can sense the inflation and the deflation of the lungs. This is part of, this information is contained in the website endlesssearch.co.uk with sensing activities. They've gone through and listed the places scientists have found neurons and parts of the brain that represent sensory activity. And one of the things we can become aware of, the sensation we have, is the inflation. And this is the way the scientists talk about it, and the deflation of our lungs. So that awareness, that sensation of the inflation and deflation of our lungs, that sensory awareness is the sensation of breathing. So we represent with, however we can do that, it's preferable to use some kind of picture or image. When I breathe in, I say I and represent to myself that the active elements are entering. We also sense the inflation of our lungs. We sense our body breathing. And I believe it's a good idea to also feel a sense of rejoicing, to smile with our lips, to smile with our eyes, to bring and also involve our feeling center and try to bring a sense of joy. And I like the word rejoicing because there's one of Mr. Gurdjieff, the Gurdjieff to Hartman compositions that is rejoice, Beelzebub, rejoice. It's a wonderful word. It means to go back and experience the primal joy. So we represent it with our head brain. We sense the inflation and deflation of our lungs with our body brain. And we try to bring a quality of feeling, a higher feeling, a rejoicing as we breathe. So when I breathe out, I say am and feel them. When I breathe in, I say I, and I represent that the active elements are entering. When I breathe out, I say am and feel them flow into my body. I do not try to make anything more of this I and am, and simply say the words to myself. I breathing in and breathing out. I breathing in and representing the active elements coming in, sensing our lungs, perhaps feeling a higher emotion. And breathing out and imagining, somehow representing that it goes, it feeds. Mr. Gurdjieff said, it flows to the corresponding place. Where it flows, how it flows, that's its own business. We just represent to ourselves, and this is a head brain activity, that it flows to the corresponding place as we sense our lungs deflating and try to maintain that sense of rejoicing, that sense of joy. And then this is where she departs from what Mr. Gurdjieff said. With each breath, I follow this order for filling. And I'm going to do a breathing exercise. When I get this, half an hour exercise that combines all the things that I talked about earlier, I'm going to do another one for breathing. That will involve a number of these breathing exercises with a little bit more of an understanding. But with each breath, I follow this order for filling. Right arm. So So breathing, and we fill the right arm. And Mr. Gurdjieff said it's easier to fill our limbs than anywhere else in our body. There's the 4 ideals exercise that has been written by Joseph Aziz. There are also hints of it in the 1943, the Paris meetings 1943, where, you know, he talks about representing, you know, Muhammad over Mecca, Jesus over Jerusalem, the Buddha over India, and the Lama over Tibet. And each one of them is an ideal. And at the foyer, below those ideals, so we don't touch them, we touch the zone of prayer that doesn't quite make it to them from people on the earth just below them in the 4 ideals exercise. But we breathe one of these ideals into each of our limbs. So with each breath, I follow this order for filling. Right arm, right leg, left leg, left arm, abdomen, chest, head, and then the whole body. So this is a variant of the self-sensing exercise, but it's not just sensing, because it's through air that feeling enters into us. We have the octave of food, the octave of air, and the octave of air are closely related to feelings. You know, it's where emotions enter into us. So this element is sort of like, this exercise is like a precursor to another exercise she actually talks about in this book, where we breathe feeling, for instance, into our right arm, and then we breathe sensation out our right leg, and breathe feeling into our right leg, and breathe sensation out our left leg. When I do the breathing one, I will actually include that exercise, this exercise. And I should point out that this one is slightly different than the 4 ideals exercise, because, you know, he says represent, and you don't have to use those figures. You want to use, you know, figures that people pray to. And he, you know, back in the 1930s recommended, you know, Muhammad over Mecca, Jesus over Jerusalem, Buddha over India, and Lama over Tibet, as ideals. And then you breathe them into your limbs. And then he said for that exercise, you breathe them into your lungs, and then you send this down to your reproductive organs, your testes or your ovaries. And then you breathe in I from your reproductive organs, and then you breathe out Am into your right leg. Then you breathe in I in your reproductive organs, and you breathe out Am into your left leg. This is the 4 ideals exercise. So it's different than this one. Then you breathe in I from your reproductive organs, and breathe out Am in your lower abdomen, and you breathe in I in your reproductive organs, breathe out Am right up to your higher abdomen, breathe in I in your reproductive organs, breathe out Am in your chest. Now my memory's going a little foggy on that. I'm not sure if I think you do breathe it into the head. And then he said what you do is then you breathe in I with your solar plexus, you breathe out Am in your body, you breathe in I in your cerebral hemispheres. I'm probably messing up the order of this. And you breathe out Am for your body, and you breathe in I in your spine, and you breathe out Am in your body, and you do that for a while. So the solar plexus is where our feeling center is centered, the cerebral hemispheres where our intellectual center is centered, in the spinal column where our sensory or body brain is centered. And that was an exercise that he taught George Adi a little over a month before he died, but it's in the Gurdjieff meetings 1943. Not the detail that George Adi or Joseph Aziz, who found the notes of George Adi, who wrote a paper on it, the 4 ideals exercise, but there are a number of different exercises that involve breathing. It's almost like Mr. Gurdjieff planted the intellectual side of the teachings in Ouspensky's mind, And once he did that, then he started working with the movements and or Beelzebub Tales and the music, and then he started working with the movements. And as he began to realize that his life was nearing the end, he began to bring more and more refined and some of these higher exercises into play. And he wanted to plant these seeds in many different places in the hopes that, at least this is my belief, in the hopes that they would be preserved and ultimately passed on. So the foundation, there's certain exercises that they didn't talk about, but then there are exercises they do talk about. They actually talk about the 4 ideals exercise. They've released that in the G.I. Gurdjieff Paris Meetings 1943. They don't go quite into the complex explanation that Joseph Aziz does, but enough information is contained within it. It's like now the people are beginning to realize we've got to release this information out there. If not, it will die as the people who are supposed to pass it down orally die, and they're not getting the young members into it. So this awareness of our breath, this awareness of our breathing.
Like a dog.
Yeah. Breathe. Let's do this again. Just breathe into the top of your head, and then breathe the sense of relaxation out your body, right down to the bottom of your feet. Breathing to the top of your head and breathing relaxation right down to the top of your feet. And let's do this a 3rd time. Breathing relaxation to the top of the head, and breathing or relaxation down to the bottom of the feet. And then become aware of your breath. Become aware of your breathing. And follow your own natural rate of breathing. And each time you breathe in, say the word "and." And each time you breathe out, or each time you breathe in, say the word "I." And each time you breathe out, say the word "and." Each time you breathe in, say the word "I." Each time you breathe out, say the word "and." And then as you breathe in, represent, so with your head brain, represent to yourself that active elements are entering. And then as you breathe out, they flow into the corresponding places. Represent that in your mind as well. And as you breathe in the word "I," use your sensory brain as well and become aware of your lungs inflating. And oops, we keep on losing Iman. As you breathe out, sensing your lungs deflating. As you breathe in "I," imagine feeling a feeling of rejoicing, of joy, smiling, particularly with the eyes. And then as you breathe out, again, try to bring that feeling of rejoicing, that feeling of joy into the process. Breathing in "I" and representing the higher elements to yourself that are entering, sensing your lungs inflating, feeling that joy, smiling perhaps with your eyes. And as you breathe out the word "am," representing however you can in your head brain that those elements are staying in your body and flowing to the corresponding place. And as Mr. Gurdjieff said, where they flow, how they flow, that is not your business. Just let them where they belong. Then breathing in the word "I," representing, imagining active elements coming in, feeling your lungs inflating, breathing in that sense of joy. And as you breathe out the word "am," representing that the active elements are flowing wherever they're flowing in your body, sensing your lungs deflating and being aware of that joy. So breathing in "I" and breathing out "am," following your body's natural rhythm of breathing. So not being ruled by the words that I'm speaking. Breathing in "I," breathing out "am." And then with each breath, follow this specific order. So Your next breath, breathe into your right arm and breathe out your right arm. And then breathe into your right leg and breathe out your right leg. Your left leg. Your left arm. Your abdomen. Your chest. Your head. And then your whole body. And just try to breathe in I and breathe out am, doing all of that to your whole body. Your whole body. Breathing in I, representing the active elements flowing in, sensing your lungs expanding, aware of that joy, bringing that joy into place. Breathing out am, representing, imagining those active elements flow to wherever they are supposed to flow. Sensing your lungs deflating and having that joyful feeling. Now, these are exercises that we should be doing all the time. Not all the time, but every day. We should learn them so that we can do them on our own, so we can sit in a chair. Unfortunately, when you do listen to a recording, when you listen to my voice and the recording will inevitably alter the rate and rhythm of your breathing. It's just one of the acts that occur. Being a hypnotherapist, I'm very aware of this process. But when you do it yourself, when you learn these exercises well enough that you can do it yourself, then you stick to your own natural rhythm, your own natural breath. Now, Mr. Gurdjieff says that when we bring our conscious awareness, when we bring our attention to our breath, it will alter our breath. But he also said, try to just become aware of the natural rate of our breathing. And this is something, she doesn't quite explain it this way, but I recommend reading this document that I've shared with the group. Just read it, and she talks about becoming aware of a current, like a magnetic current, something. So, she talks about different aspects, different levels, some practical, some more philosophical, but it's a good way to sort of understand our breath and breathing. And as Mr. Gurdjieff said, in Gurdjieff's early talks, 1914 to 1931, it's one of the last ones there. It's on page 414. It's, I forget the name of it. I think it's just, talk 1939 or something, but it's this breathing exercise. So it's another rendition of this exercise. And, we want to make sure that we are in the comfortable state. He also recommends starting with an affirmation. I'm going to breathe in with my whole self. And as I do, I want my body to digest. Let me see if I can, I've got that. I'll bring that up. Yeah, so this is, oops. This is Mr. Gurdjieff's explanation of it. Exercise, 1939. So he says it's very important. 15 minutes, relax. Break tempo of ordinary life before doing exercise. Breathe in I, breathe out am, with all three parts do. Not just mind, feeling and body also. Make strong, not easy thing. When breathe out, imagine part of air stays in and flows to corresponding place. Where flow, how flow, that is its business. Only feel, that part remains. And Mr. Gurdjieff was very conscious of the difference between the word sense and the word feel. So only feel, that part remains. Before beginning exercise, say, I wish to keep this substance for myself. Without this conscious and voluntary labor on your part, nothing at all will be coded. All will in time evaporate. Just this small property in blood makes possible very big result if done with conscious labor. Without this, 1 month you must work for such result. When doing, must be very careful not to change exterior. It is inner thing. No one need know. Outside keep same exterior. Inside you do. I actually recommend doing this when no one's around, making this a very private, sacred thing. Not hold breath, just breathe in and out. Of course, to change thinking will take time. Automatically, breath will adjust. To be able to do exercise not lopsidedly, you must hold attention on it. To arouse feeling, interest, and attention. For cooperation, you must think following before beginning. I am now about to begin this exercise. With full attention, I will draw my breath in, saying I, and sensing the whole of myself. I wish very much to do this in order that I may digest air. To arouse body to cooperate, take corresponding position. Inner tension of forces mobilizes your centers for working together for this aim. Breathing out, imagine something flows, like when inhaling cigarettes, so a gray fog. I am now about to begin this exercise. And then this is what we should also say. I am now about to begin this exercise, which I have been fortunate enough to learn from Mr. Gurdjieff, and which will enable me with the aid of conscious labor to coat higher bodies in myself from active elements in the air I breathe. So right here on the screen, this sort of top paragraph, to be able to do exercise not lopsidedly. That means with our head brain, our body brain, and our feeling brain together. So here he uses feeling, interest, attention. To arouse the body to cooperate. He uses the word imagine. That's the head brain activity. So to do this with our head brain, our body brain, and our feeling brain. To use all three of them. And then I'm just going up on the small little paragraph here. Just this small property in blood makes possible very big result if done with conscious labor. Without this, 1 month you must work for such result. He says that the alchemical process, the process of refining our being, of growing the Kesdjan body, of growing our higher body, it's an alchemical process that can be mapped out. And I've talked about this before. He says that in the way alchemy was metaphoricalized in the Middle Ages so that they hid it from the church. In that alchemy, in order to make gold, you first need a tiny little bit of gold. And so in order to grow the higher parts of our being, we need to have these higher refined substances within us. We can try to do the work, but unless we have these substances within us, we will not be able to do the work. They are necessary for the beginning of this alchemical process. And it's through breathing in, through conscious breathing, and not just consciously breathing, but consciously doing this exercise, that we feed our being, that we digest these higher particles that are necessary for our work. So theoretically, if we do this exercise correctly, we should notice our ability to self-remember dramatically increases. Our ability to do inner work dramatically increases because we have the higher energies at those levels within us. Now, we've been doing these breathing exercises. I'm going to go back to Madame de Salzman. Let's just do this again. So our body's in a nice, relaxed state. We feel balanced. I breathe in through the centers, head, body, and feelings, and silently say, I am. When I say I feel the three centers as though something stands up. And when I say am, I also feel them, but as though something sits down. When I breathe in, I say I, and represent to myself that the active elements of the air, whoops, you're not seeing this, are you? Whoops, wrong one. Whoops, don't know, why am I not getting the right one? That's the exercise that I'm working on. Here it is. When I feel balanced, I breathe as though as though through the centers and silently say, I am. When I say I feel the three centers as though something stands up. And when I say am, I also feel them, but as though something sits down. When I breathe in, I say I, and represent to myself that the active elements of the air are entering. So do this. Make sure you're doing this. When I breathe out, say am, and feel them flow into and fill my body. I do not try to make anything more of this, and more of this I and am, and simply say the words to myself. With each breath, I follow this order for filling. Right arm, right leg, left arm, or left leg, left arm, abdomen, chest, head, then the whole body. And give me just a minute here. Let's see if I can. Can you see this, the collected state on the screen?
Yep.
Okay. After when you've done these exercises, this is how we should always end, particularly this extremely refined inner work. The 28 or 30-minute exercise I'm working on, and all of the exercises that I will be working on and creating over the next little while, I will end them all with this, or my own representation of it. You represent, the word represent, that's a head-brain activity. You represent to yourself that you are surrounded by an atmosphere. Like the earth, man also has an atmosphere which surrounds him on all sides for a meter more or less to a limit. For those of you not metric, that's like 4 or 5 feet. In the atmosphere, the associations, in ordinary life, the thoughts produce waves. It concentrates at certain places, it recedes. It has movements according to the direction which you impart to it. This depends on the movement of your thought. Your atmosphere is displaced in the direction in which your thought goes. If you think of your mother who is far away, your atmosphere moves to the place where your mother is. Now, I'm just going to make an aside here. In the Solange Clostre's book, Becoming Conscious with Mr. Gurdjieff, he also talks about how whatever we are identified with, when we lose ourselves, that's where our atmosphere goes. Our atmosphere can be dispersed through feelings, through people yelling at us, a loud sound going off, other different ways. So it's not just our head brain, our feeling brain. It can also through our physical brain, fear, various different things that we can feel physically. So when you do this exercise, you represent to yourself that this atmosphere has limits. For example, 1.5 meters. That's about 5 feet, shall we say. Then you concentrate all your attention. So do this now, representing your atmosphere around your body. You do not allow it to go further than 1.5 meters. When you feel your atmosphere quieten, without waves, without movements, then with all your will, notice the phrase, with all your will, you suck it into yourself. You conserve yourself into this atmosphere. You draw it consciously into yourself. The more you can, the better it is. To start with, it is very tiring. Now, this is an adjunct to the breathing exercise. This is another way we digest the air. So when we finish an exercise, hopefully our atmosphere has been calmed by this exercise. We represent an atmosphere around us. We're surrounded by an atmosphere, 1 meter, which is 39 inches, 1.5 meters, and we represent it. And not just represent it, but with our mind, we keep our thoughts still, we keep our associations still, so that we're not creating waves. Mr. Gurdjieff actually talked about elsewhere the fact that our atmosphere, we've got an atmosphere that's composed of thoughts and the associative mind and the head brain, and a sensory atmosphere that's about our body, and a feeling atmosphere. So we want to keep our thoughts, our sensations, and our feelings quiet. We want to keep this atmosphere like a pond that is so tranquil, without any ripples, without any movement. And then, so represent this to yourselves now, this atmosphere around you. And I'm going to count to 3. And at the count of 3, you suck it into yourself. And he doesn't say it here, but I think it's a good idea that when we do that, that we represent breathing in higher particles, that we are breathing in, doing the ending with a little bit of the breathing exercise. And then as we exhale, we imagine that what we sucked into ourselves, the higher part remains and flows to the corresponding place. So represent your atmosphere. Become aware of the atmosphere around you. Represent it, imagine it in your mind, sense it with your body, feel it with your feelings. 1 meter, 1.5 meters. Keep your thoughts, associations, your sensations, your feelings calm, tranquil. And then 1, 2, 3. Suck it in. And then as you breathe out, imagine a part stays, and that part of the breathing exercise. And then he said, this is how one must do the exercise. Afterwards, you rest. You send the exercise to the devil. Repeat it afresh in the evening. This exercise is done especially to allow one to have a collected state. It is the first exercise, and it's the first exercise towards learning how to self-remember. So he doesn't say that here, but it's the first exercise in self-remembering. So we're feeding ourselves. We're digesting these higher elements that we need for our inner work. And as we do this, not only are we growing our own being, but as we grow our own being, we are able to transform higher and higher substances. And as we transform higher and higher substances, we serve a higher and higher purpose for this planet. Mr. Gurdjieff, and this isn't In Search of the Miraculous, Mr. Gurdjieff says that humanity is the evolving part of organic life on planet Earth. And then he says that within humanity, there is an evolving part. And I believe that that evolving part is the part that is connected to the great work, however the great work has manifested itself throughout the ages, throughout humanity. That anyone on the mystical path, whether or not it's the Buddhist form of mystical path or the Hindu or esoteric Christian or the Kabbalah, at some level they may not have the full understanding and the full connection, but those on the path are devoted to this alchemical process of refining our being. And as we refine our being, we become part of the evolving level of humanity. And Mr. Gurdjieff said that if humanity stops evolving, if it begins to degenerate, that affects organic life on Earth. And then that has a ripple-like effect on the whole chain of creation, the whole ray of creation, this particular ray of creation that we are on. Not all rays of creation, because there are other rays of creation that we're not connected to. But what we do not only has significance for ourselves, it not only has significance for organic life, it not only has significance for the Earth, it also has significance for the planetary realm, for the solar realm, for all suns, all worlds, that what we are doing is important. And this is, I read this elsewhere. Someone put it on Facebook. It's, we become this active part of co-creation. The more awake we become, the more aware we become, the more conscious we grow, the higher purpose that we serve. And Michel Conje, in his book Interoctaves, and Dr. Conje was a student of Mr. Gurdjieff, he talks about the fact that in the universal octave, the highest we can go is up to hydrogen 12. The highest we can go. That's the higher intellectual center. That's the level of the holy denying. It's the lowest level of the Godhead. So we can actually evolve up to that level, and it's like we become this conduit. And he was very much, France, meeting Mr. Gurdjieff during the Second World War in Paris, occupied, teaching his students in the 1960s, still very much the influence of the church. And the, believing that we can be this connection energetically between heaven and earth. And we do this through evolving our body. When we evolve a Keshan body, when we evolve the astral, the higher body, when we evolve the higher being body, we still have our physical body. All of the levels of creation on this earth, all of the levels of organic life, which according to the ancient diagram of all living things, actually begins with the metals. Then the next level is the minerals. Then the next level is the plants and the vegetative level. And then the next level is the invertebrates. And then the vertebrates, spinal column. And then we move up to me, as far as I can see, the mammals and then man. But there are categories of some of the higher. But, you know, to be a man doesn't mean I don't have the mineral level or the metal level within me. I've got iron, I have potassium, I've got various metals in my body that are absolutely essential for my body. So I have a metallic self, I have a mineral self, I have a vegetative self. J.G. Bennett talks about this in terms of relaxing. He said it's important to relax the esophagus, to relax the stomach, to relax the duodenum, and right down to the navel, because he says this is where the vegetative part of our being is. If you understand, I mean, the food diagram, we eat the food. First place, dough is our mouth, re is our stomach, me is our duodenum, and between me and fa is our liver. So that's where it enters our blood, but some of the food goes down and it doesn't affect our liver. It goes and gets digested in our intestines. J.G. Bennett says that's where the vegetative self within us exists. So we still have a vegetative self. We still have a self related to the invertebrates. And, you know, through the whole evolutionary biology and biology, you know, they can trace the journey, you know, from, you know, there's a part where when we're forming in our mother's wombs that, you know, it's almost like gills show up, for instance. And, you know, we go through the whole evolutionary span as we become humans. So when we become the link, the higher we go, the more we are in connection with those higher sources. We're still in our body. We still have iron in our blood. We are still composed of the metals and minerals of this earth. So it's like we bring this energy in through ourselves, bringing it down. That's why I believe that these teachings are the most earth-centric teachings that I've encountered. They're not self-abnegating. They're not self-denying. They don't, you know, the goal is not to disappear. The goal is not to achieve nirvana, which means to blow out the flame, or the Advaitin, where you just disappear. You know, within Hinduism, the idea of liberation or moksha from the world. Sri Aurobindo, Hindu mystic, who is very in line with the Gurdjieff teachings, said that there are two ways, paths. One seeks liberation from the world, and the other seeks transformation within the world. And this is a path of transformation in the world. And I believe as we transform ourselves, as we grow our being, we perform a higher service. And, you know, we are the evolving element of humanity, and humanity is the evolving element of organic life. And so by being on the path, we occupy an absolutely essential place in the scheme of things, that the work we do on ourselves not just has significance within ourselves, but it has, you know, global, earthly, and cosmic significance. So, you know, we are instruments. We are embodied beings here, and we are serving a higher, more sacred purpose. And I believe, you know, that we have organic life to help us. I believe that there are forces in the universe that are here now. And Mr. Gurdjieff talks about this in Tales, how evolution on this planet Earth has gotten messed up because they had to implant the organ kunda buffer, which is, my understanding, is the ego, and then they took it out and properties were crystallized. And the problem with the world today is the human ego. When we talk about evil, it's not evil. Evil is not a general phenomenon. There is no such thing as absolute evil in this world. Evil in this world manifests itself through the human ego, and it's only limited to our species. A lion that attacks a gazelle is not evil. A crocodile that eats a little child is not evil. But a man that shoots another man, the ego and the evil enters into our species, and it's limited to our species. But, you know, goodness and other things are here as well. And it's the struggle between the lower and the higher. Mr. Gurdjieff said nothing happens without a struggle. At any rate, I've talked a lot. It's 12. Any comments? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk this long.
Continue talking a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I was actually going to talk about personality and in essence today, but you know, breathing is very important. The work, you know, the inner exercises are more important than the theoretical understanding. And I hope, you know, we've got the theoretical understanding. We've read In Search of the Miraculous, and we've dealt with these ideas and everything. I'm going to be talking more about them and bringing them more into play and different exercises we can do for them. But this inner work, do it every day, every day. The breathing, the sensing, moving through our body. And it's not just for yourself. I do this as an act of service for, excuse me, the world, for humanity, for organic life, for the planet. Any comments? I should shut up.
I'm feeling pretty full. I am interested in some stuff on personality and essence that you mentioned that, and I was like, ooh, that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something perked up in me. So formal request that we touch on that next week, perhaps.
Yeah, it was my plan today, but you know, I went to sleep reading that John de Salzman bit, and so it just came out. I wanted to show another representation of the exercise, and I've gone into it in great detail. Hopefully there will be people who watch this and they'll go, ah, and they'll recognize the importance of doing this work. I mean, just a teaser. Personality is, you know, is what is not our own. My words, I learned every single word that I speak from outside me. So my words and my language is not my own. My name, Alan, is not my own. It came from my parents. They gave it to me. Anything that comes from outside of ourselves is not our own. What is within ourselves is our own. And I like to imagine this as a garden. So you've got plants that are native to the garden, and then you have these seeds that blow across the fence into the garden. And the seeds that blow into the garden, for most gardens, choke the natural plants, and they prevent them from growing. And the thing is, we need some of those seeds that blow in from the garden. If they don't blow in from the blow in across the fence, somehow the natural plants won't develop properly. So we need this balance of what is not ours. So things that come from outside of ourselves, and things that are natural and native to ourselves. You know, I've got a young friend. He's my children's half brother. I love him dearly. It was his birthday last Monday. He was 15, and he's become a libertarian. And we were arguing about philosophy, and we went off for a walk, and argued and argued and argued. And I told him that if you have a belief that 100,000 other people have, it's not your belief. You learned it. You absorbed it. You know, all these beliefs, all these things that people spout as the truth, and you hear them and they're all saying the same thing. They learned it. They absorbed it. Mr. Gurdjieff said the way that we begin to differentiate between things, and you know, is through using confrontative logic, looking at things from many different perspectives, particularly beliefs. But beliefs will always be a part of personality. There's something, love, hope, faith, conscience. These are part of our essence. These are natural seeds. So there are things that we have to cultivate within ourselves, things we have to cultivate that come from outside ourselves, and a lot of weeding of things that come from outside of ourselves that need to be done. And
okay, Alan, I do need to go today.
Okay. Yeah.
I do need to get going. So maybe we could pick this up next week.
Yeah. Okay. This is just, just to get you guys thinking about it, to get yourself, your thoughts. But yeah, it is noon. It is 12. Okay. Thank you all for coming today. Take care. Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
weekend.
Bye, Alan.
Bye. We lost her again. We kept on losing her, and
Okay.
she'll watch it.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye, guys.
Bye.